This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie Sherman, how are you this morning?
You know, I was riding in today to the studio, and I was listening on the radio to Bob Dylan, and he was singing "The Times They Are Changing." And that really resonated with me for a number of reasons. There's so many things that are going on that are game changers in the political arena, in the sports arena,
right?
You know, things in entertainment with sexual assault and sexual harassment. But we're not going to talk about any of that today. I think we're going to talk more about the changes in the way business is done and the way people interact with the buying and selling of things. When we were kids, or at least when I was a kid, you used cash. We started off with just using money and cash to buy things. You go into a candy store, you go into a, you know, and you had a dollar for you had your allowance money, or you had your work money, or your babysitting money, and you pay cash for it. And that went on for a long
right.
time. And then all of a sudden, you know, when you got older, there were checks. People didn't have credit cards yet. They had checks, and people wrote checks. When I first came to Montana, and I think it's still the case in a lot of Montana, people would buy, you know, a cup of coffee and write a check for it, $1, $1.50, because most of the checking accounts here didn't charge a service charge or a fee.
Right.
You know, and then of course in the 80s and 90s, which is not a long time in the past in our history,
right,
we moved into credit cards and debit cards eventually. Right. And now people are almost shocked if you ever give them cash again. You know, almost everybody has one credit card in their pocket. I go out with people, you know, on trips, or I'm in big cities. All they got in their pocket is a credit card. Taxi cabs take them, vending machines take them, movie theaters take them. You know, you can do almost all your transactions online. I just saw that Starbucks now, you just tap the machine and it charges you. Internationally, it's all the rage. And then all of a sudden, just in the last couple of years, cryptocurrency, best capsulized by Bitcoin,
right,
has sort of taken over, and it really has been unprecedented, given the fact that in the past week or so, a single Bitcoin, which is not actually a real coin for our listeners,
right,
it's a digital currency, hit $11,000 a coin. It came out, you know, in 2010 at 1 cent. And a year ago, it was $1,000. And at that time, when I read about it and was looking into it and learning about the whole industry, I thought $1,000 was ridiculous. I read one investment advisor yesterday said it could go to $1 million a coin.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. And there's some people predicting, you know, 40,000 is not unrealistic. And then there are people like Jamie Dimon from, you know, J.P. Morgan, who's saying it's a fraud, it's a bust, it's a blip, it's, you know, and it is very volatile. After it hit 11,000, it dropped immediately the next day by 20%. I mean, there's a lot of wreckage in the fast lane of investing in cryptocurrency.
But this past week had a record-breaking number of, or when this, you know, 2 weeks ago when we taped this show,
right?
It had a record-breaking number of signups, over 100,000 a day, right?
Well, a lot of younger people understand it, and I think what we want to do today on the show is to try to explain a little bit about the whole world of cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, smart contracts, cyber wallets. If this all sounds like gobbledygook to our listeners, this is something that is going to be commonplace over the next decade or so.
Sure, absolutely.
And what we've done today, or want to do today, is bring in someone that we've had on our show before, Vadim Levitin, Dr. Levitin, who has a graduate degree in electronic commerce.
Right.
And understands.
I can't believe Vadim is very
versatile. He's a medical doctor, went to law school, has a master's degree, and understands the whole area. You know, I mean, there's thousands of currencies now that are part of cryptocurrency.
Right.
It's not just Bitcoin. That's the most well-known, and it's used ubiquitously for the whole industry. But there's Litecoin and Zcoin and Dash and Ethereum and Ripple and Monero and it just goes on and on and on that are being created as the tool really for peer-to-peer digital transactions. That's what it really, when all the dust is settled, as best as I can understand it, and we're going to ask Vadim to explain it even in greater simplicity and in example, what this whole new trend, it's not a fad, it's a trend in how
definitely not a
business
fad.
And transactions are going to take place in the future.
And I think some of our younger listeners are going to know brands like Venmo and PayPal, right? Everyone knows PayPal,
right.
But Venmo, where people just between their smartphones are sending each other money. They're splitting a bill and they're saying, "Here's my $6.92 of the bill."
Well, what's interesting about it to me, and then we can bring Vadim on to talk about it. I was very skeptical because in my simplistic understanding of cyber currency and cyber transaction and the technology behind it, I thought, and it is true, that the value of the coin and is only to the extent that users agree to take it.
Right.
So that, it's basically a buy and sell arrangement, whether it's, buying and selling a pizza, which is used for, to buying and selling, a digital security systems for financial transactions. It's only valuable if there's a buyer and a seller who agree to accept its value. And I didn't think there were going to be very many.
But there are.
But there are. You can buy Ferraris with Bitcoins.
Amazing.
You never see them. There are miners who solve mathematical equations and in return for they're called digital currency miners. They have very powerful computers, and as a prize for solving these equations, they get Bitcoins.
Right.
And again, now they're worth, as I said, 11,000 for Bitcoin, and even a one that most of our listeners probably don't know, Ethereum, which their currency, digital currency, is called Ether.
Right.
It's $500 a coin. So they're really, it's coming on us fast and furious without us even paying much attention to it all.
Right. Which is wonderful.
And now we're going to provide an educational service to our listeners to try to explain what's going on out there and what it means for the future.
Vadim.
With Dr. Vadim Levitin.
Okay, you are listening to What Do You Know? Proudly sponsored and supported by Dawn Maddox and Engel and Volker's Luxury Real Estate right here in Missoula. It's her new brand, and we are thankful for Dawn being a great and loyal sponsor of ours. Back after this with Vadim Levitin. Okay, we are back with Dr. Vadim Levitin.
Vadim, how are things in Las Vegas?
So far, so good. I can't tell you much because whatever happens here has to stay here,
I understand that. And also, if there's any place in the world where you want to know how to use money, Las Vegas is the place to, emanate from. So,
yeah, especially if they know how to use other people's money.
Exactly.
OPM.
So we've just got our head, Scott and I, filled with the jargon and the the lexicon of this new cyber, investment finance world of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and blockchain technology and smart contracts. And so what does this all really mean to the average person who would be listening into the show?
Well, it means pretty much the continuously evolving computing paradigm. We started a long time ago during the Second World War with cryptography, in fact, to make it deciphering secret messages by the Nazis, and that was the famous Turing machine. You probably saw the movie about that. And that's the whole kind of IT field started with cryptography and cryptology. And so, and then it evolved into, databases. We'll remember the punch card. Then it evolved into freestanding PCs. Then it evolved into networks. And so now this is just a new reincarnation and the next step in the evolution of technology. It's basically distributed computing, and it's databases that are connected to the network. In fact, database and networks are so married together that it becomes one. So there's data and the network. And that's probably the world we're going to be living in.
And so what does that mean? It takes out the middleman, so to speak?
Well, then that brings kind of a sociological discussions there rather than technological. What does that mean? I think, in a way, it means that we're still having the dialogue of who's running the society. And the society, whether it's the technology people who are creating the world, or is it the people who enter law schools and or do TV shows and become presidents. And I think that debate is probably going to continue. It hasn't been resolved, but that whole kind of the newer incarnation of the cryptology and cryptography and bitcoins and Ethereums and all the cryptocurrencies, which is there's about over 100 of them now. It all evolved kind of from more of a cultural phenomenon of the cyberpunks. There's a kind of a little subculture within the technology world, and you're probably familiar with that. Those are the guys who came up with this, and they have certain view of the world that is technologically very advanced and sociologically very naive. And so some of the drivers were, what if we have our own world currency, what do we need the government for example?
Right.
Which is kind of naive. Just because you have a world currency doesn't mean that you don't need the government. It's a longer discussion.
Well,
that's where it kind of comes from.
Sure. There are currencies that are backed by, natural resources, in the world. There is fiat currency, which is, the kind that we have in the United States, which is backed by the full faith of the government. But it's not every single paper bill that's issued has actual, gold or, natural resources behind it. And now we have a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, which recently hit $11,000 a coin, up from 1 cent, 7 years ago. And these coins, while, they don't really exist in the sense that people don't actually have a physical coin that they own that's worth $11,000. Would you explain all of that? Because it's still hard for me to get my arms around.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting kind of observation, Arnie. I think that, since we got rid of the gold standard in this country and around the world, or any other standard to begin with, most of the currencies in the world are based on the promise by the government. It's just basically, our government says this is $100, and then they look straight into our eyes and say, trust us. It is. And that's what it is. But 80% of the money supply, I'm not talking about cryptocurrency, a regular money supply in the world, 80% exists only as a computer code. There are no coins. There's no paper. It's just computer code.
Right.
And that happened a while back.
Without anybody really paying attention or knowing it. It just happened.
How secure is all that, Vadim? Like this
How
code?
secure is the fact that 80% of the money supply in the world is the computer code?
Yes.
Well, it's been working pretty well for almost 50 years. so it's probably safe and secure. The cryptocurrency is a new phenomenon, and it's just an extension of digital money. Basically, the only issue is that there is no issuer. In other words, the guy or group of guys or group of girls, we don't really know who invented Bitcoin, who put it together. There's really no one who says, trust us. It's not backed by anything. It's just basically kind of an online ledger. It's a database connected to a network. And so its value depends only on the consensus of people who think it has value. But it is just different computer code from dollars. Most of the dollars are computer code, just in a different program, and it's not cryptocurrency, but it is secure. And so now you have a proliferation of cryptocurrencies. As I said, there are over 100 of them, and they serve different purposes. So we're probably going to have a further diversification of the field. You're going to have many cryptocurrencies. But cryptocurrency itself is just a little blip on the screen of what's behind it. and the behind it is the domineering technology of blockchain.
So tell us,
that's going to be really.
Tell us as simply as you can for my feeble mind. I won't speak for Scott. What blockchain technology offers that hadn't existed before it?
Well, I have a glib answer. Opportunities are pretty much unlimited. At the moment, what we have is kind of the beginning of it. It's kind of difficult to say, but it is just the start of it. I mean, right now, the Bitcoin system is capable of processing only 7 transactions in 1 second. The Ethereum system, which is another cryptocurrency, can process about 20 or so transactions per second. So imagine the world where that technology can process 50, 100,000, million transactions per second. Well, that means that everything that happens in the world can be based on the blockchain. Your internet can be based on the blockchain, the Internet of Things, all of the appliances, all of your transportation, all of your financial system, your entire society's infrastructure can be driven and based on the blockchain.
And why is that? And why is that good?
Inevitable.
And why is that good? And how does that change things?
Well, whether it's good or bad, that's a different issue. It's certainly efficient because it requires very low maintenance. It's pretty much free. It's in public domain, so to speak. And there are many different blockchains. There's some private, public, semi-private. There's a variety of different organizations behind it. But the technology itself pretty much manages itself. You don't really need to do anything. So like the smart contracts, for example, that Ethereum is based on, you don't need to do anything. The machine, so to speak, will figure it all out once the contract is complete. And when I say contract, it basically means any transaction, whatever transaction is. So if any machine agrees with another machine or one institution agrees with another institution, say, okay, well, we have a deal. There's a transaction, and if it doesn't happen, nothing happens. There's no third step. There's no payments. There's no consequences. There's nothing, and it happens without human intervention. It's a self-managed system that doesn't require for humans to do anything, and it's secure, reliable. It's unbreakable virtually, and it's unbreakable for a very simple reason. It's just the nature of technology. We kind of didn't realize how brilliant that was when the Bitcoin showed up. And the technology behind it is so brilliant that it's very transparent. So if you and I have, several hundred blocks in the blockchain, everyone can look at it. So theoretically speaking, we could come and alter one of the blocks. The problem with that is that you would have to change all of the blocks in the system, and that's almost impossible. There's just not enough power. There's not enough electricity on the planet Earth to change the entire blockchain.
So if you went, for example, you and I did some kind of business transaction. I bought a Ferrari from you, and you accepted cryptocurrency for it. You could not, or I could not.
Already.
I know. Yes. You and I could not go back in and falsify that. I could not go back in and say, I never got my vehicle, or the Ferrari people could say, we never got paid. Once a transaction is, encrypted into the system, it's virtually impossible to remove it.
Well, it doesn't matter what we'll say.
Right.
Because you don't need to say anything because everyone can see. It's transparent. You look in the blockchain and go like, what are you talking about? That never happened, or it did.
Right. So it's finite.
You don't need court systems to resolve the disputes because they're obvious. So, like one of the kind of examples I usually give is that you could, in theory, probably hack into blockchain and steal something, but it would be the equivalent of robbing the bank when the entire city of New York is present while you're robbing it. So
sure.
Then you say, well, I didn't really rob the bank, and the entire city of New York said, what do you mean? We were there. We were looking at you while you were doing it. Don't be ridiculous.
Well, it's fake news.
Let's do a quick ID. Let's do a quick ID.
Right.
Our guest is Vadim Levitin, Dr. Vadim Levitin. We're talking about digital currency, Bitcoin. I mean, what's the category we're talking about here?
The category of
money. What is this called? Cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency, right?
So,
but I think that we are talking. Even if we think we're talking about cryptocurrency, what we're really talking about is the blockchain technology behind it.
So correct me or validate my perception. This is, to me, if I'm trying to understand it, internalize it, is sort of like when the internet first became available and ubiquitous and available for free. Businesses used it to create new vehicles for buying and selling, marketing, all sorts of uses. They used the technology to apply it to their business to make their business more efficient and effective. Cryptocurrency and blockchain technology can be applied to business and industry and many other applications to make those business interactions have the same, multiplier effect or the same power that the internet provided.
Dramatically on a different level, on a much higher level.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, there's absolutely, at the moment, I mean, basically there's no limit to that. So as we enter, for example, let's say, the financial system, transportation system of the country, when we have driverless cars all over, it's more likely it's all going to be driven by the blockchain technology. Underneath, it's kind of at the infrastructure level, fundamental technology that will run the society.
And the technology is free?
Technology is pretty much free. The applications are not. It's just like the internet. The network itself is free. The applications are not free.
So it's
some
somewhere.
Of the access may not be free.
So it's sometime in the near future, are we going to run into the same issue of net neutrality and all of that with the blockchain technology?
Always. I mean, that's my personal view. I think we're going to run into much more complex issues, and it is really going to be who's running what. In other words, when your financial system, for example, is independent of financial institutions, if you don't need the bank, then who runs the financial system? I mean, just like now, who runs the cryptocurrency? No one. Well, the world does. So in the debate, whether the technocrats or technology people or cyberpunks or whoever, or lawyers or the former TV actors, whoever runs the society, the correct answer probably the people should be running it. That's probably the correct answer. So hopefully that's what it's going to evolve to. So hopefully that will be kind of a liberating technology that will enable people of the world run things as opposed to enabling governments to run things.
Well, do you think that there will be resistance to it? Because I know there are people who would feel, for better or worse, right or wrong, they like the idea that their money is sitting at, Chase Manhattan or Wells Fargo or some other financial institution that's been around for 100 years, and and they can walk in, still walk in and feel a physical brick and mortar presence. This has none of that, and you're relying on peers. So what do you think the resistance to a complete transition to this kind of a financial and information and life management?
Yeah, I think that, most of the people in the world really don't understand how things work. We don't really know how financial systems work necessarily. We don't really understand how the government operates. I think that kind of that confusion is just something that we get used to. So we already got used to those banks, as you described. It doesn't mean that we understand it or we think it's good. We just got used to it. And so it will take some time to get used to cybercurrency. There is a central, Bitcoin repository. There is a bank somewhere on the internet somewhere, and no one owns it. It's the same thing. They're without the building, but it's pretty much the same thing, except it's more secure. No one charges you. No one is going to hack into it. No one is going to manipulate it. No one is going to trick you. It's more fair and balanced. So in the long run, probably it's more superior system.
Well, let me ask you a question. So, like, my nephews are in their 20s, and other people they keep on using apps like Venmo and PayPal and these different kind of ways of sending micro payments and requests for payment to one another to split a bill for dinner, or whatever the transaction is. Where do they sit in the cryptocurrency kind of continuum? Are they what would actually help a Bitcoin be redeemed and or charged? I mean, is that the idea?
Well, judging by what's happening within the marketplace, more likely the answer is yes, because that's that tremendous rise in value is probably because some people are interested in it, and just more people are interested in it today than, let's say, last year. Sure. Or 2 years ago. And more likely, yes, the younger people are going to get used to it better and faster because they're already doing it. They already kind of live in that cyber world. They're much more online than we are. And so, yeah, probably that might be inevitable.
Well, I'm fascinated, and I love going up to, like, as Arnie and I were talking about it in the intro, when you go up to a Starbucks and you kind of tap, your smartphone against some device or some card against a device, it automatically takes away your, whatever.
Charges your credit card.
Charges your credit card. Or just today I was over at Safeway, or not Safeway, at Fresh Market here in Missoula, and I use my smartphone to pay for everything, And what's interesting is you don't have to take a wallet out. You don't need a receipt. You have a record, and it's immediately, though, it charges and deducts from your credit card, right? Because your credit card is connected to it. So why is this better than a credit card? Why is cryptocurrency better than just having your American Express or Visa attached to an app?
Well, I'm not really sure if it's better from that perspective.
Or more secure.
It's definitely more secure. And I think what we're talking about is the level of acceptance. The reason why you could do those things in Starbucks and other places is because dollar is accepted, and they pretend that this computer code that you exchange with Starbucks, which is what's happening, is actually exchange of dollars. That's kind of behind it. And so right now we have plenty of business around the world who already accept Bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies as payments. There's a huge marketplace. There's several actually online where they accept only cryptocurrency. You really cannot buy it with any other currency.
What markets are these? What markets are these? Like, where is this happening? Is it Asia? Is it, Europe?
It's not really. That's another little thing, because it is really kind of a global phenomenon. So since you really don't know where it's happening, because it doesn't really matter, it's online, it's in the cyberspace, then some of them, there are lots of European initiatives, some American, some Canadian, but pretty much it's worldwide. And that acceptance is going to grow, and it's been growing. And that's kind of what's behind some of the hikes in the cost for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all of that.
So explain this.
Primarily,
explain this to me. So let's say you buy a pizza online, or a pizza using cryptocurrency. And the pizza normally sells in U.S. dollars for $10 for the pizza. When you buy it using Bitcoin, how much are you paying for it?
Well, let's kind of ask a similar question. You buy, if you're a member of the Domino frequent, pizza program,
right,
and you buy 10 pizzas, or I don't remember how many,
Yeah.
whatever number of pizzas, then they bring you another pizza for free.
Right.
Well, they're using your points, which
Right.
is basically a branded cash,
Right.
right? It's cash that's issued by Domino Corporation.
Right.
And so the question is, so how much did this pizza cost you? I mean, it cost you nothing, right?
Right. That one
In
cost,
theory.
yes, in theory.
Right. But more likely, if you want to assign value to something, then the value is what you paid for it, let's say last week. If you paid $10, then basically they gave you free something for $10 value.
Right.
But the value changes all the time. So, and the cryptocurrency's values change all the time as well. It fluctuates.
Right.
There are cryptocurrency exchanges where you could go and you could trade, you could sell, you could buy. Obviously, you could buy bitcoins for a bunch of dollars or euros or whatever you use, and that's how the value is kind of transacted. So how the value is assigned and created, that's a totally different process. But it's no different than any other currency as far as the assignment of value.
Right.
So your pizza still would be the equivalent of whatever that is.
It's just further down. It's further down the food chain.
Right.
It's like, do you want to be the intermediary, or you want to be the actual currency?
So what you're saying to me, just for our listeners, if you bought a pizza for one Bitcoin, and a Bitcoin was $10, let's just say
Right.
$10 value, and this week the Bitcoin is worth $20, does the price of the pizza go up to $20, or do you get two pizzas for the price of one Bitcoin?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think probably what we don't want to get into is it's not a comparison game. It's not. I know I've read enough. I'm in this business, but there's plenty of people who are saying, so why is this better than dollar? Why is this better than euro? Well, it's dramatically better than dollar and euro because every transaction is recorded. All of them, forever, in perpetuity, forever and ever and ever. Everything that happens to this so-called coin, it's not coin at all, but whatever happens, it's always there. You could always go and check. It's always transparent, immutable, forever. It could be anonymous as well, just like any cash. So, and it's beyond anyone's control.
Right.
It's not really controlled by any government.
I understand.
So it's not necessarily.
I understand the blockchain technology concept better than I understand how a coin that really isn't a coin changes value so dramatically during a short period of time.
The value
of it. Mm-hmm. That's the part that is, to me, is harder to figure out. The technology, I understand. You have a new way of the new distributive model, whereas it's not through one central, point, and everybody's equal and is transparent. And all that stuff sounds good to me. I have some difficulty figuring out how that system relates to the value of a Bitcoin or an Ethereum Ether coin or token or whatever you want to call it, and how that value is changing over time.
Yeah, and probably in the same way that all of the values of whatever commodities change, or dollars or stocks, probably based on the perception of the market and the attitude.
But how do you feel about someone other than a country or a government controlling the currency? Because isn't that the big thing? Isn't that the big difference? Is that it's not underwritten by a government, right?
Well, it's not controlled by any. It's controlled by everybody.
It's not controlled by Steve Mnuchin. It's controlled by.
It's controlled by everyone.
Right. Oh, or no one.
So
yes.
Well, the big question is that
it's like the Matrix.
Yeah.
It's confusing. I guess it's confusing.
Oh, well, it's just new.
It's just new.
I don't know why.
How did you get involved in this?
Well, I started a long time ago. I think that the currency controlled by Mnuchin is more confusing to me. I mean, basically,
We all think.
oh yeah. How did that happen? We just elected some people who were popular in some places, and they sounded good or didn't. Sounded good enough to some people, and then these people send other people, and those people are the ones who decide who lives, who dies, and they decide how the system works. Why is that better?
Right,
maybe it is.
right.
I'm not saying it's just something we're used to, something we've lived with for a long time, and so we kind of think it's normal. But it certainly appears less normal to me. Increasingly so since last November, for sure. That's not really normal.
What do you think all the excitement is about that? Why the excitement? Why is everybody plunging in droves?
I mean, why does Bitcoin go from $1,000 a year ago to $10,000 or $11,000 now, and some people are predicting it's going to go to $1 million, and some people are saying it's a fraud, it's a Ponzi scheme, it's a bubble, it's going to disappear. I mean, there's a there's a wide range of opinion on it.
Yeah, and they're all right. all of them are correct because it's all that. Well, I've listened to many people who kind of always say that because they ask usually the financial people, like, why is that happening? I have a very simple explanation. To me, it's not really very difficult. It is not based on the cryptocurrency itself, not the tokens themselves. It is based on increasing acceptance by the world of blockchain technology and excitement and accepting that this is domineering paradigm of computing that's going to be running the world.
Right.
And I think that's what's behind it. That's why cryptocurrency is just kind of it's just kind of an app, as you say. It's something that sits on top of this incredible breakthrough and this distributed computing, kind of decentralized model of computing. And it's a superior model, period. It's just a superior model, and it's incredibly genius.
Well,
and
aren't even the financial institutions leaders that are criticizing it are actually adopting blockchain technology to run, the Morgan Stanleys of the world and the J.P. Morgans of the world.
Yeah. Well, I just read an article in, I think, Wall Street Journal where it said trillions of dollars will be invested in blockchain by the financial industry in 2018. So I think that's what's behind this interest and this growth, because out of all of the interest, what else are you going to buy? I mean, one thing you could buy, you could invest in one of my companies that I'm starting, but those are kind of hard opportunities to come by. And those companies are kind of difficult to invest because everyone is investing in them. And so in addition to this, there's a kind of a dilemma that I'm faced with, that there's about 10 to 12,000 people in the world who know how to do it, how to do blockchain. And most of these 10 to 12,000 people in the world are busy. They already have jobs or some initiatives.
Right.
They're busy. So when you have kind of a new idea, the new paradigm of computing, how are you going to find the engineers who will help you build it? And that's going to be another challenge. And so I'm kind of looking around the higher educational landscape of my country, and I don't see any programs that are offering master's degree, bachelor's degree in blockchain technology, and that's shocking to me. And it's a disgrace. I mean, that's going to put us behind, because right now there's probably like 4 institutions in the world who offer graduate programs in that kind of specialization. And none of them are in the United States.
Right.
I mean, that's going to change, but I'm just kind of puzzled by the fact that people are just so slow in the uptake. That's the new hot thing. It's not the Bitcoin itself.
Sure, it's the technology. So
right.
let me get back to one point that you mentioned. Are all of the major financial institutions investing in something that's going to make them obsolete, or do they think that they can somehow apply this and still be a player in the new distributive technology world?
Oh, great question. I think it's, if you can't fight them, join them. I think that the blockchains that these institutions are investing in, they're not public blockchains. These are not some tokens that you're going to mine, like you could mine bitcoins in the good old days. There is not something that you could. They're private blockchains. This is just an institution, an organization, and an industry searching for new productivity, new levels of productivity and efficiency, which this computing system will produce for them, definitely. So they're just looking to make more money.
Right.
They just recognize that this is a superior way of doing it.
So they in fact, in one hypothetical example, could let's just use Wells Fargo. They could come out 2 years from now and say, you shouldn't buy Bitcoins. You can buy Wells Fargo Platinum, and we have the same technology as Bitcoin, and we're using our 100 years of banking experience to back it up.
Sure, I think that one of the options is proliferation of a number of private currencies.
It is interesting.
But private currency is different from public currency.
Right.
Bitcoin is a public currency. No one owns it. No one runs it. No one says we're the best. They never said that. No one knows who invented it. So it's just out there.
It's just a remarkable thing. That's something that no one knows how it is, how it got invented, where it is, who's involved with it, who controls it, can be worth $11,000 a coin. And what are there, 21 million Bitcoins in theory that are out there?
Right.
Yeah, so 21 million times 11,000. Somebody's making some good. So somebody's making some good spending money off of that.
Yeah, the people who mined it in the beginning did, and actually it is managed by. It's not like it's not managed by anybody.
Right.
There's a variety of people who manage it.
Who are they?
And watch it. They're kind of most of them. That's a bunch of them. They're mostly the cyberpunk types of people, and many of them are not in the United States. They're scattered around the world, and they get tiny fraction of transactions sometimes, and sometimes they don't. So it is run by a community, so to speak.
I mean,
it's not an entity. It's not a government.
You had some direct interaction with, with the Ethereum folks and Ether, and you provided some, consulting and advisory to them. And without divulging any confidentialities, you might share with our listeners a little bit about, how that system runs. I mean, if the Ether currency is now $500, a coin, or an Ether.
Right.
So how did that all come about? That wasn't U.S. based.
No, it wasn't. No, I was on the board of Ethereum. It's based in Switzerland right now, but it actually started in Canada by a 19-year-old cypherpunky kid who dropped out of college. And that's another kind of see how the new world of finance is coming and operating, because now you have the initial coin offering, so to speak. And when you announce that, then you rely on the community of in the world. You don't know who they are, but you're relying on them to give you money for that. And so this young man, his name is Vitalik, he wrote a paper when he was 19 that he just kind of looked for the efficiency of the Bitcoin system, and he couldn't find them. And so he said, well, we should do some smart contracts, and here's how we're going to do it. And if you like my idea, send me some money. And he's got $15 million within 30 days. He didn't go to Sequoia Capital. He didn't go to venture capital. He got a bunch of money from people. And so that's how that started. And then, the money kept coming in, and they have a development group in London now, and it's a foundation in Switzerland, and it's a brilliant initiative run by, I would say naive, wonderful people, but they're not really the mainstream people who understand how governments operate, how financial systems work.
They didn't come out of a financial background; they came out of a computing science background. Many of them.
Right, and I think that's quintessentially one of the important issues. I think that those people are the ones who are inventing our new world for us, and we know very little about them, and we have been known kind of to ignore them for years and years. And I mean, we kind of moved most of the IT into, kind of subservient place, and we educated some people, and they just kind of help our businesses be more effective, more efficient, and make more money.
What?
Yeah, but those are not the people who are inventing cybercurrencies, blockchains. Those are different kinds of people. Those are people who fantasize and read science fiction, and in our case, who reads science fiction? But that's where most of this comes from. If you read enough from cyberpunks, they were talking about drones and self-driving cars many years ago. This is, in other words, we live in a world where the future is created by people we know very little about. And then when we caught off guard and we're trying to understand what that is, suddenly when we notice, we go like, well, we don't know what that is. Well, if you kind of if we paid a little bit attention before, Bitcoin is not that new. We just haven't paid enough attention. But we should have paid attention. What is the philosophy behind the currency that is not controlled by anybody? What is this whole technology behind it that is so amazing and ubiquitous and just, powerful? And no one really paid that much attention. Majority of the world didn't. Some people did, and those are the ones who mined the Bitcoin, and now, some of them made millions of dollars.
That's incredible.
But I'm just suggesting that that's kind of the short-sightedness of our society, not looking into people who are creating our future is really.
We like to avoid it. We don't want to know. We don't want to know the future.
We don't want to know.
We're going to do a quick break. Our guest is Dr. Vadim Levitin. We are talking about cyber. We're talking about cyber currency and cryptocurrency. Right after this break, we're going to finish up with Dr. Levitin, Dr. Vadim Levitin, and let's talk about what else he's working on beyond cryptocurrency. Back after this. Okay, we are back with Dr. Vadim Levitin.
Vadim, what else are you working on besides getting a grasp on this mind-bending future that we're about to embark on?
Well, first of all, I'm trying to help other institutions kind of grasp what is going on and help them to.
And you're a good person to do that.
Yeah, you are,
because you can draw from lots of different perspectives to try to help them figure this out. Because it really is a totally new phase of activity that's going to dominate and monopolize and change the way things have been done in the past. So you're helping companies. What else are you doing?
Well, I think that there's. I have several initiatives in the blockchain that hopefully will work out, and there are plenty of. It's not cyber currency at all. I'm kind of less interested in cyber currencies, as you could probably tell from our conversation, than in the technology behind it. And so, what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years is that we're going to witness an explosion of thousands and thousands of variety of different apps that sit on top of blockchain technology. And so I'm just working on several of these apps to see if they will be received by the market, favorably, and see if if they're going to work out. And it's pretty exciting because it's very kind of a creative process, and it's very interesting and challenging because there's so many unknowns. Because we're in the uncharted territory. It kind of reminds me of the beginning of Internet, where I was also involved in. But it's kind of the new and even more exciting reincarnation of that process.
Well, that is fascinating. And the thing that's most fascinating to me is that you're not a 19-year-old kid sitting in your garage, in your sweats, listening to AC/DC, designing code.
That's true. But Vegas is the place.
Well, we have an adult, with a multifaceted background that's looking at this, and that's what I think to some extent may be missing: the marriage between these, as you describe it, the cyberpunks who don't really know much beyond their computing and design capability. Marrying that with business savvy people who can see the application of all of this in a myriad of new ways.
Most people are just too lazy and scared.
Yeah,
to investigate.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But I think Arnie described that process. That is exactly what's taking place right now. It's basic. Most of the people I deal with don't believe that we should get rid of governments and corporations. We could probably make them better, and we can probably make people more powerful in the world. But I think it's naive to think we don't need the government or the companies to run our infrastructure and our society. That's just not how. It's too naive, and that's not what I'm working on. I'm just trying to make it better. But yes, definitely, it's going to mature. It's like any new reincarnation technology. This one is going to mature, and it's going to move into mainstream, and it's going to become exactly kind of the way of life and the way of doing things.
Right.
Well, you've been a great guest, Vadim.
As always,
exactly.
You enlighten us in many different ways, and we'll have you back on some other topic, in the near future.
Look forward to speaking to you.
Great being with you guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO.